Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Brent Bowers. Brent is an investor and a coach with a focus on buying and selling vacant land. As an Army officer with over 8 years of service, Brent was spending a great deal of time away from his family, and he knew he needed to make some changes to be more present with his wife and children. He's passionate about helping other people find success in real estate investing, particularly in land investments. Brent chooses to live his life based on Bob Burg's quote: "Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first." Brent, welcome. We are really excited to be speaking with you today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike, man. I'm excited to be on here. I love your setup. 12 questions in 30 minutes. That's pretty cool.
So I'd like to tell guests both of those are suggestions. So if we go over or we're just under time, no one is going to come after us, especially the podcast police. But I cut your bio short. There's a lot of good stuff in there. What caught my eye was needing to make changes to spend more time with family. When you think back, is there a story or time you realized I'm away from home too much? I need to see them more. I need to change something.
Yeah, man. And I just did the math here. 30 minutes, 12 questions, 2.5 minutes each. So I'll keep it under two to be safe. So many times. I'll tell you what, my first marriage ended in divorce. And I was on marriage number two and still am, thank God. And that first baby was a year old, and I realized I only seen him about 4 of those months. So I was gone quite a bit in the military. I was training for a third combat deployment when that baby was born, and then was heading out again for another 9 months. So it was just it was so many times when I realized it's like I'm just not home enough. So hence why I really got serious about real estate.
Okay. Yeah, I think 4 months out of 12, not a great ratio there if you want to be home. So I think that would be a pretty good indication that a change was necessary. What was the first thing that you did? Because what you focus on in real estate is not traditional. We'll talk about that. But what was the kind of the first step you took to make that change?
Yeah, so I already had owned rental properties, and that obviously wasn't allowing me to quit my day job. If anything, I had to have probably a second day job to pay for those rentals. But I was listening to a ton of podcasts, kind of like this, your 1230 podcast. But I was also listening to things like the 4 hour work week, and just looking for answers. My car was like a mobile university. I was really searching for, what to do. How do I replace my income with passive income?
Okay. So I think that's a good place to start because a lot of times I'll talk to real estate folks here on the show, and passive income comes up, and that's a term that sets off a kind of an alarm for me and means different things to different folks. So when you say passive, what do you mean? And explain how it's not the same as a free lunch, please.
Oh yeah, I love how people like that's so true. Like if I hear passive, I think, oh, the money just flows into my account. I don't have to do anything ever. But there is some work on the front end of that, and sometimes that passive income ends sooner than what we like. I would like for it to last as long as possible. But passive income for me was, getting selling a piece of land on seller financing to a buyer that could afford monthly payments, or preferably a down payment bigger than the monthly payments, and then monthly payments for as long as possible, at a nice interest rate. And that money comes into the bank account every month. And it's not like a rental where I got to go and repair things. Like I've had a furnace guy out to my house in Colorado twice now in the past like 3 days. And it's the second furnace guy because the first one told me it was going to cost 8,500, and I was like, "This is crazy!" And I realized he's trying to replace the air conditioner as well during the winter time. But anyhow, like it's passive. Like I'm not having to make repairs. The money comes into the account, and sometimes we got to answer some questions. I don't think there's a truly like set it and forget it with anything.
No, thank you for saying that because I think that's a good starting point. And I want to dig into the land piece. So you had rentals, and you've referenced that was not necessarily the moneymaker that you had hoped or that many people think it is. How did you stumble upon land? I know a
Yeah.
podcast is a good source, but as far as getting that first deal, how did that happen?
Yeah, so great question. I was again, like I said, I was listening to the podcast. I already owned rentals, but I was trying to wholesale houses too to pay some, some credit card debt down, student loans, yada yada. And I ran across a podcast I'd never heard before. I can't even tell you whose podcast it was, but I heard this guy like flipping land and doubling his money overnight, and I was like, there's no way half of what he's saying is true. And if half of what he's saying is true, that just changed my life. So I immediately shifted, like we would say in the military, we lift and shift. I shifted my wholesaling business to going after tax delinquent land. And I immediately started mailing people a postcard that said, "Hey, my name is Brent. I'd like to buy your land at, 123 Main Street. If you're interested in an all cash fair price offer, call me or text me." And my phone actually started ringing. And these people wanted to talk to me. And first guy, it was so easy. Can't even like believe it still. But he was a retired CPA. He just said, "Hey, yeah, take the land. It's yours. You can have it for $285. I basically don't owe that much in taxes." And yeah, I mean, I know we're running it close on that 2.5 minute, but I want to take longer on this one. I had no clue what
Please
I was
do.
doing. Had no clue what I was doing, but I went and looked at the land. He wasn't in a hurry, thank God. The seller wasn't in a hurry. And I called a real estate office, and a nice realtor answered the phone. I was like, "Hey, what can I list this land for? What would you list it for me for?" And she said, "I could probably list it for about 10,000." She was very familiar with the area. And then crazy thing happened. She offered me $5,000 for the land, and I accepted it. She sent me a contract, a purchase agreement, and I called the seller. I said, "Hey, I found a buyer that wants this land," because that $285 to me back in 2016 was a stretch. It was quite a bit of money. I was paying for diapers. We just bought a new house. Like I didn't have the money, period. And the seller said, "Yeah, no problem." I said, "Can I pay you on Tuesday? I'm selling it next week." And he said, "Sure." So I went and got the quit claim deed on Tuesday. Didn't do any title searches, none of that stuff. I was being ignorant, honestly, but I was so like blinded by this money I was about to make. I just didn't think. So I got the quit claim deed. I gave the guy the $285 check. I was hoping he'd wait like a day or two to cash it. And then I went and dropped that quit claim deed off at Land Title Insurance Company in Colorado Springs. And then Wednesday, I went and picked up my certified check for $5,000. And I was hooked.
I could see how you'd be hooked just based on those numbers, but just walk the audience through this. So, a CPA generally has a good sense of business, understand leverage in deals and what things are worth. How did somebody who had never done this before think I'm going to get in touch with the local real estate professional and gauge the actual value? And the owner or the seller in this case thought 285 was a fair deal. What was he missing?
Honestly, don't think he was missing anything. This guy was sharp as a tack. And he said, "Look, I traded this thing for taxes many years ago. The land's not buildable. It's one ingress, egress." He didn't know. He didn't explain all that to me. Honestly, I think he was just trying to help me out. He was a blessing from God. And I didn't pull anything over in this guy. And I wasn't trying to. And I'm so thankful for him. And I'll tell you, I kid you not, the blessings just kept coming, man. Um, I bought a second parcel like a few days later for $500 this time. I'm doubling the cost now. This one, I wasn't as nervous with this one because I had just gotten that 5 grand check. So I went and wrote this lady a check. I still remember to this day. She goes, "I don't know what you're ever going to do with this godforsaken land or what you want with this godforsaken land." Because her husband was a title guy. I'm sorry, not a title. He was a stock trader. He was a day trader. I mean, their front porch is bigger than my house. I mean, their front porch was like 5,000 square foot. It was nuts. But Anyhow, she's in Denver, Colorado. I'm sitting on her porch. I had just dropped my wife and my son off at the airport in Denver, Colorado. And I wrote her the check. I went home immediately and posted on Craigslist the land because I'd already went and taken photos of it because I was prepared to buy it. She had went to her bank, notarized the warrant. I'm sorry, not the warranty deed, the quit claim deed. I still hadn't started checking title on any of these, by the way. I'm making tons of mistakes. But by Sunday, the next day, a guy brought $500 cash to my house, like cash. So I got my money back out of this land and signed a contract for deed, basically a land contract to pay me $400 a month until the land's paid for. I sold this one for $5,000 as well. This time I didn't contact a realtor like a dummy. So many things, so many mistakes looking back. This land was worth so much more than what I sold it for. But it doesn't matter because here's the thing. I now had a paradigm shift like Stephen Covey talked about. I was like, if I do this 10 more times, my bills are covered. I now am financially free. And I did. I did it in about 12 months. Had over, I think, over like $9,800 a month coming in by month 18 in payments. Here's the caveat, though. These were very short-term loans because I was like, velocity of money. And those things pay off pretty quickly in 18 to 24 months.
Okay, so I will follow up on that, but I don't want to lose the tax delinquent land. How did you identify those parcels and how did you know which zip codes or what areas?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
So I called the county of El Paso County, Colorado, and I told them what I wanted to do. There was a little miscommunication. I had to call multiple times and ask multiple times, and I was like, "Look, I want a list of people that are not paying their taxes." They thought I wanted to buy the back taxes. They thought I wanted to pay the back taxes and make money as a tax lien investor. No way. I didn't have cash sitting around to do that. Nor did I know how to do that. So they sent me finally what I thought I wanted, which was the list of the county held tax liens, aka no one bought them. So those were the ones still for sale. Um, and no one had bought them for years because most of this land was inefficient, not buildable, not accessible, not big enough to build, blah, blah, blah. So no one was paying the back taxes on them. So when these people got my letters, it was like me throwing fish food in a piranha tank. Like it was like, but here's the problem. It was a very small list. So I exhausted it fairly quickly. Um, so that's how I found these addresses. But here's the thing: it was like 600 pages of scanned in schedule ID numbers. So it was a pain in the butt to get all this on an Excel spreadsheet to send to a mail house. So I paid a virtual assistant $5 an hour. I think she spent like 327 hours. I'm not just kidding. It costs like $300 basically. Do the math. I don't know, but her name was Joanna. I still speak to her to this day. Well, I've talked to her. It's been a while since I talked to her. Now her sister helps out with things as well. Because Joanna's now in the United States. She's no longer in the Philippines. She's now in the United States and she's a nurse. So I feel like I had a little bit of ripple effect in her life as well. But yeah, and so did she is in mine as well. But that's how we identified it. And then I mailed it. I wasn't sitting around thinking about this. Here's the key to all this. I was just taking massive, imperfect, dirty, sometimes ugly action.
And sometimes that's all it takes because we'll sit here waiting for the perfect next step, and that next step never comes. Sometimes it's just taking it, and then, as you mentioned with the deeds, it's taking a risk, and you don't know what you don't know until you find out.
And let me just say, there was no dirty deeds in this. I said ugly, dirty action. I didn't mean like I wasn't being dishonest or anything like that. I was tithing on this money, all the things to partner with God and just do the right thing. And I remember questioning, like, is it okay that I'm making all this money in land? And I haven't even gotten to the big stuff yet. Like, this is just the life-changing part. Still, those two deals are more exciting than any other deal I've ever done in my life. I bought $1.2 million parcels of land. Not exciting. Those first 10, I can remember pretty much every one of them.
Okay. Well, it's a big jump to go from 285 to over a million there. Um, we talked a little bit before we hit record about where we are. Where I am in New England, there is not a lot of undeveloped or vacant land in general. Where have, you've mentioned Colorado. where is a good, if someone's listening to this, like, yes, I want to do that. I'm going to find out who's not paying their taxes in their land. But where is kind of the prime area for this right now?
Yeah, it's real easy. You can, my strategy has completely changed. Do I still buy tax delinquent land? Occasionally, it happens, but I don't go after those lists. There's way easier, better, more efficient ways to do it. Now, I go where there's demand. So I don't know. We can go on like free services like Redfin and see where the land's selling. And then once we see where it's selling, we'll kind of try and like micro in, and then we will get a list of what's sold and then price it out and then figure out how we can reverse engineer it to get profit on it, and then we'll build out offer letters. And we do all that with software. Obviously, I'm not sitting here doing this by hand. And then we trickle those out, and these things come back to us signed in our inbox. Now, it sounds a little easier than it really is. There's a little bit of work behind it, but it gets faster and faster the more of these we do.
Okay. And so, I mean, as you explain that, that makes sense. You also coach others to, I'm assuming, do something similar or also get involved in investing in land. So if you're talking to somebody who says, again, this sounds great, I think I've got enough cash where I can get started. I've got a couple parcels I'm looking at. What should I do next? And I don't have any of the software set up yet, but how can you help me?
Yeah, if you're looking at a piece of land, or maybe you know someone that wants to sell some land, or you know a good area, well, the first thing I would do is see what other similar sized parcels are selling for in the area. Apple to apple comparison. We call those comparables, and then do your best to see like the three lowest comps, like what sold for the least, and get it for less. That simple. You get that thing under contract for less, and then you want to be a marketing person. Once you get that thing under contract, just sell your contract, assign your contract. Now, this is illegal in some states. For instance, like Chicago, Illinois, or Illinois, it's illegal. So you would need to buy it and then sell it, resell it, and then check with a local real estate attorney to make sure it's not illegal. But basically, all you're doing is buying something at a discount and selling it for more. Like, we don't need to overcomplicate this.
No, that's good advice on both fronts there to check with local experts, agents, attorneys to make sure what you're doing is proper within the state, and then not overcomplicate it. Because I think that's where, besides the not starting, that's where things fall apart. Where it's I need to make this perfect, or I need to make sure that I'm doing these 19 things when really two would do. So we've talked
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about the land. We talked about kind of what spurred that change. You've mentioned an evolving business. What indicators were there for you to say, okay, I need to change, or I need to do something different, or how did that become apparent to you?
Well, I'll tell you what. One of the indicators was like I was up to I think seven or eight rentals at that time. One of the rentals was a triplex, and it was no way possible I was able to leave my job with those rentals, even if I got eight more just like that. Because all I knew was all I knew at that time. I had fixer-upper properties, ugly properties, bad tenants. I was renting the properties for too much, so I was attracting bad tenants with bad credit because the doctors, the people with the 800 credit score, don't have to rent from me because like they don't have to pay as much as I was asking. So, quick tip: you want the best tenants, don't charge the most. But I had to. That was the only way I can cash flow at all. So I thought. So I'd all be doing evictions or repairs and you name it. So that was one realization. The second one was I was wholesaling houses at the same time. So I was spending a fortune on mail, an absolute fortune to get a house deal. It might cost me like $1,000 to get a house deal. Then I make $2,000 as an assignment fee. Was I really making money? Probably not. So those two things were almost like a perfect storm. When I heard this podcast about land, I was like, no one else is talking about this. Maybe this is it, because I feel like when you go against the herd mentality, because the herd kind of goes off the mountain and dies, the cliff. Like if I can go the opposite direction, maybe that's the answer. And it absolutely was, because I feel like some of the people we read about the most successful people in the world, Elon Musk and, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they go exactly against what the herd mentality is doing. I'm not comparing myself to those guys. They're legends and they're heroes, but you look at what they've done and they're doing exactly opposite of what everyone else is doing.
No, that's a very powerful visual, especially with the herd falling off the cliff, and that you reference people who have gone against what the herd or what mostly others are doing, and how they were able to succeed. I do want to wrap here because I'm looking up. We're almost near on time.
Oh my
But
goodness.
the quote in your bio, uh, basically, to paraphrase, that your influence or what others think of you is where you put their interests or how you help others achieve what they're looking to, where they're looking to go. How did that become apparent to you, and what's a real life example of that in your life?
So, one perfect example was I didn't know it at the time. I was spending a lot of time going to lunch with people and coffee appointments where I was like cracked out on coffee because I was drinking so much coffee on coffee appointments. And people wanted to know what I was doing and pick my brain and do what I was doing with the land business. And I was speaking at a local meetup we started in Colorado Springs. And I was just like, why is no one like doing this? I'm spending all this time talking about it for free. And then a coach of mine was like, how much do you charge? And I was like, nothing. And he goes, well, that's the problem. No one's respects the knowledge you're giving them because they're not paying for it. When they pay, they listen. So that was hard for me. I was like, I just didn't want to take the money. And then finally someone came up to me and offered me $1,000. And his name is Lance King. I got a podcast I did with him on the Wholesaling Inc. podcast, where I interviewed him, but he took action and I saw that ripple effect. And I was like, if I can help more people like that to take action, and it just felt so good seeing him, like he was doing better than I was in my land business very shortly after me. Then my competitive nature came a little bit, and I started feeling bad about myself. I was comparing myself to him, but I had to turn that around. And I was like, if I can help more people like that, I get a great feeling from it. And then I created this amazing community, and it took me, I don't know, I started in 2018. It took me 19, 20, 21, 22, about 6 years until recently to figure out that by creating so many successful land investors, and I shouldn't say I created them, by being that ripple effect or that just help to create that has blessed me in so many ways. It would take another 30 minutes for me to explain it, but I'll just leave one thing. I do tons more land deals now because I get to fund other people's land deals. They fund my land deals. Sometimes they buy my land deals. They buy my notes, like you name it. It all goes around.
That's great to see how it comes back, and thank you kind of for walking us through that. Last land question of the night. Someone's again listening to this and it's like, all right, I want to get started, but I feel like I've missed it. Is it too late? And if not, what can they do tomorrow to get on the right path?
I love it. Sometimes I feel like I've missed it. 2000, I feel like 2016, no one was talking about this. Now my reticular activators, like you buy the red Jeep, you see them everywhere. Now I feel like, oh man, everyone's talking about land now. It's like, have we missed the boat? And then I'm just like, I don't think it's possible. It's like, for instance, I'm creating 80 new parcels of land. Well, God's the only one that can make more land, but I'm making 80 new assessor's parcel numbers. I'm taking one parcel and turning it into 80 more paper lots. So like you can do that if you're a house builder, I guess, with houses, but there's so many more. Like, so I used to go to so many seminars. I was a seminar junkie. I spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on training and seminars and you name it. But I would see 1,000 people at not quite, maybe like 600 people at a house investing seminar, it seemed like. And then I go to the biggest land event I've ever been to since 2016, had 100 people in the room.
That's a good indicator. So thank you for sharing that. Um, Again, wrapping up here as we're near it. We've talked a lot about land. We've talked a little bit about your background. Um, What's a question I didn't ask you that I probably should have tonight?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, though. I can replace it with this. Going back to seeing land sharks community members do better in their land business with me didn't sit well for a while because I felt like I had to have all the answers. I had to be the richest guy because I'm the one coach. They paid me to coach them, and I didn't want to share deals I was doing because I needed lending on it, but I didn't want to share it with my land sharks community because I was like, oh well, they'll judge me because I'm the one coaching them. I'm not like I don't want to feel not good enough, but that had to like I just want to inspire someone that might be have a community or they're not tapping into the community that they built because they don't want to talk to their community because they might need lending on a deal or maybe they can syndicate a deal. All I want to say is if you're kind of new to this, like heck with that. Get rid of your pride. That's your ego. I could have went so much faster, so much further, so much quicker if someone would have told me that. Like my coach said, you never want to do a deal with your community members. I think that's bullcrap. Why not? Why not bring them in? Like because the rising tide raises all the ships.
That's a good example and a good to share with our listeners here. Uh, let's end here. What's next for you, Brent?
Oh man, next, I'll tell you what. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, but right now I'm in resale mode. We've accumulated quite a bit of parcels of land, and sometimes people stop paying after a few years on some of these parcels, so I've taken a few back. So we're really in resale and cleanup mode, and just preparing for the end of 2024, seeing how much real estate we need to buy because we buy buildings with land money for the tax incentives, the tax shelters. So right now, I'm thinking really short term, but I'm always looking to build additional passive income. So we take one passive income, the land, and we put it into light industrial buildings. But what's next to answer your question is we're selling our apartment complex and three other houses, and I'm going to 1031 that into a beautiful mobile home park.
Okay, so you will
And,
be
and
plenty busy here as we wrap up 2024. Brent, where can our listeners find you or connect with you if they want to learn more or to become part of that Land Sharks community?
Yeah, I'm on most of the socials at Brent L. Bowers. And if you want to schedule a call, you want to chat, maybe talk about what you're looking to do in real estate, if I can help you in any way, point you in the right direction, just go to thelandsharks.com and schedule a call with me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Awesome. So we will post all that in the show notes. Brent, this has been a blast. Thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward, my friend.
Thanks, Mike.